All right, we are joined by broadcaster, co-host of the 310 to Left podcast, and I would say the face of NESN, Tom Caron. TC, how you doing?
Joey, Scott, good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Sox, maybe not so much. We're coming to the end of another Deja-vu season, if you will. I want to know what it's like from where you sit. If you think it's harder or at sometimes maybe easier covering a team like this in a season like this.
Harder or easier than what? Like winning teams?
The 2018,
it's harder.
Obviously, it's kind of hard to compare. I'm sure that was a lot more fun, but do you think it makes the job tougher in a year like this?
Yeah, in some ways it does. I mean, because listen, I've been doing this a long time, so it doesn't really change what I do, but it changes the interest level. It changes the energy around it, right? I mean, if the Red Sox are playing in a playoff race, if they were tied for the wild card right now, instead of, as we talk, being 4 out with 3 weeks left, you'd be a lot more invested in what the Twins are doing and what the Royals are doing. And you'd be there's more energy that kind of rides you. And just, we were talking about this yesterday, from a personal perspective, it's a really long season. We're sitting here at whatever we're at, right? 140, whatever. We haven't done them all, but we've done most of them. And it's sort of the energy of a playoff race that picks you up and lifts you down the stretch. That hasn't happened yet. So, yeah, it's a little harder to sort of roll in here every day when they're playing, badly. That's the way it is.
Yeah, the energy's contagious, not just, from fans to players. I know they talk about that all the time, but just in the building, especially being seated where you are, out in right center, getting this, ruckus crowd kind of does, I would imagine, transfer into, what happens on camera. We talked a little bit, Scott and I, on this show about what the White Sox broadcasters must be going through this year and what that must be like to do 162 for them. But part of me thinks it's almost better in a way because you're coming into every day expecting to lose, and then every win is like your Super Bowl. Whereas now the Sox, this team should be really good. It should be interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I remember Dennis Eckersley saying to me years ago, we were sitting in studio, he's like, and this is probably, 2009, 2010. So you're talking about like every year, even the years they didn't make it, they're in it till the end, right? So they're a playoff caliber team every one of those years. And he says at one point, imagine doing this in Pittsburgh or Kansas City. And then it was like 4 or 5 years later, it's 2012 and 2015. And I was like, well, remember you said that time? Well, this is what it feels like in Pittsburgh or Kansas City. And it's been, listen, man, it's been a long time. Like I've been sitting in this chair since 2004. Not this exact chair. They get new ones. But and back then you took it for granted. You really did. Because like I said, even the years they didn't make the playoffs, they were in it till the end. And then, it really over the last 11 years, right? 2013 was a gift from nowhere. But from 14 to now, what do you got? 14, 15, 2 last place, 5 last place seasons out of the last 9. And by not being in last place this year, maybe that's a step in the right direction. Maybe. I mean, I'm still not ready to say it. Listen, I spent most of this year buying into what these guys were doing, right? I mean, this was 10 games up, 11 games up at the All-Star break. Been a horrible second half. We know that. I like their moves at the deadline. And they went and got relievers, veteran relievers. I was like, all right, that's exactly what they need. Well, neither one panned out, and both are on the injured list. So as much as I enjoyed a lot of this season, I really did. I mean, as a fan, I thought this was a good year for the team. But I'm not ready to say right now that it was a big step in the right direction because I need to see what happens over these next 17 games. I think they matter. You end up with a losing record, you end up in last place, you're right back where you were. So I will say that these 3 weeks matter, even if you don't think they're going to make a playoff spot. How you finish this season after back-to-back last place finishes, this matters.
Yeah, that's something I think me and Joey have talked a lot about, just getting out of the 78 win area, just because if you win 84, 85, you can tell yourself that there was a step in the right direction. If they end up with 80 wins, it's like, okay, this was the same thing 3 years in a row. I think that's been like a big threshold for no arbitrary threshold for us, just to feel like it's moving in a direction. I wanted to ask you about your podcasting. This is your first season at 310 to Left, or starting that show. I actually worked at NESN in 2022. I helped kind of behind the scenes with the TC pod, TC and company. I think we've maybe exchanged emails at most, but it was one of those things where I was trying to get involved and try and like make the written content in the video content combine more with podcast content.
No, you were one of the few who did. You were the shining example of people who cared about the product.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to find a way to we were doing all these, we write like 70 articles a day or something like that. And it was like, we can combine some of these things more. I know I was surprised at 22 years old how much leverage they gave me in terms of like, I went with, Ahmed, the CMO, and he was just like, what would you do? And I was like, TC should probably read an ad for his own show on the pregame. And they were like, all right. And then you like started typing an email, and I was like, all right, hey, we're cooking. So I know we got a little bit of success.
By the way, Scott, not to cut you off, but what you stepped into was just the culture at NESN of, oh my God, we're so sick of hearing TC whine. If you want to take on any of this, please take it. That's what you stepped into. So.
Well, hey, it was fun for me. It was fun to have a little direction at that age that I didn't expect to have, and like I know, like that was when Tyler was involved as well, and I remember that it was a little short lived because I think he emailed me and was like, oh hey man, like I'm leaving. I hope it's in good hands. And I was kind of like, oh, man, I am too. And then I don't know what happened after that. But, it was.
I got Alex Spear.
Right. Yeah, good point. Right. So I wanted to ask you what motivates you to do podcast coverage when you're already on TV so many hours a day. I feel like that's a lot to throw even more on-camera work in there and interviews and when you're doing all that you're already doing.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a lot. It's but the original. So let's go back. I mean, the beginning of it was 2020, and it was the TC and Jerry podcast, and that's where it began. It was the original idea was Jerry, Remy, and I sitting around at spring training, bored, came up with the idea of doing a podcast, and we thought it'd be funny to call it Tom and Jerry. Apparently, there's legal rights and whatever, so NESN didn't want to take that fight on. So we changed TC and Jerry, and the idea was, that was the time when they were doing the 3-man booth, right? It was Eck and Rem with Dave O'Brien. And they were so good, but it wasn't, like the old Jerry show, like Jerry with Don and Jerry with Dave when it was a 2-man booth, where you just kind of see that really funny side of Rem come out. It would happen once in a while, but with the 3-man booth, it's just a little different, right? Eck was really good, but it had gone kind of in a new direction. So the idea was, let's just do a podcast where we can mess around and Jerry's got great stories and it won't be that hard. It'll be me and you. It's like, all right. Well, then it was COVID, so we actually did it for that year. I remember one of my favorite Jerry Remy stories was, during COVID, he did the podcast with once. I said, what have you been up to? And he was telling me how he was high risk, right? He had multiple lung surgeries already, cancer survivor. He would get in his car. He wasn't supposed to go like anywhere because of COVID, but he would get in his car, the inside car in the garage inside, and drive to Fenway like he was going to work, loop around Fenway, and then drive back home just to get out of the house. Like never get out of his car, never. And like it was just like that was what he was doing to stay sane. And then he got sicker and ultimately we lost him. And I didn't know what we should do. So the idea came to just keep the podcast going with guests. And it wound up being really fun. Like I really enjoyed it because it was, we do what we do in the pregame show. It's really fast paced. We cover a lot of ground. If you compare our pregame show to a lot of other pregame shows, we got a ton of content in our hour. Like we're bouncing around with a lot of interviews. We got Jemai on the field. We got our guys in the booth. But this was a chance to sort of sit down with someone for 20, 30 minutes like we are now and just have a really good conversation, get to know the player. And the players started doing it. So it was great. And then NESN kind of really got into the podcast business this past off season. They launched 6 or 7 video podcasts that air on the YouTube channel and on different platforms on NESN. And I was like, they wanted 2 a week, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do 2 a week and 6 or 7 pregame, postgame shows. It's not sustainable. But we got to talk about what if you had a co-host. And so Alex and I had kicked around the idea for a while. Alex and I both started covering this team in 2002. He was a writer for the Boston Metro, which doesn't even exist anymore. And I was the sideline reporter for NESN. And we've just always had a great relationship and been good friends. So I thought it'd be fun. I love the way he approaches the sport. He's analytical, but he's upbeat. There's a lot of guys who've been covering this team a long time who are really pretty negative all the time. And Spear and I aren't really like that. We both still have fun coming to the ballpark for some reason and think it should be fun to cover baseball, even if they're not doing well. So there you go. There's your unexpectedly long 4-minute answer on the podcast. But you will always be part of the DNA of the TC and whatever the hell it's going to be called today podcast.
He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that ego boost. That's okay.
No, I don't.
He's entirely removed from the success of 310 to left.
No, you're an early adopter, as we like to call it. So thank you.
There we go.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, so you can turn $10 into $1,000. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. There's a bunch of player stat projections coming up for this upcoming NFL season. I got Patrick Mahomes for more than 4,300 pass yards and Aaron Rodgers for more than 3,750 pass yards. Get in on the action. Come on, download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game. But no, you and Spear are great, and Spear is awesome. I mean, he does seem like a guy who he emits a real passion for the game, and he doesn't fit like the archetype of a stereotypical baseball writer who's been doing this for 20 plus years. He seems like an accountant who stumbled into baseball, and he's a savant.
He is Harvard, unlike the rest of us. He is Harvard educated, so it does sort of give him a different. But he's analytical without being a complete nerd. And I use the word lovingly. There's a lot of nerds in baseball, but a lot of them write very nerdy copy. He doesn't. He's funny. He connects with people. He tells you their story. He's that rare combination. I'm much more of a storyteller than an analytical guy. I like analytics. I like metrics. I use numbers. I use stats. But I am 75 storytelling, 25% numbers. He's more probably a number guy than a lot of people, but he's not 80-20 numbers story. He's almost 50-50. He tells a great story, but he's got the numbers to back it up. It's a rare gift.
Yeah, no, your guys' dynamic over there is great. And to pivot to the team just a little bit here, I gotta get.
Speaking of numbers, they're not good.
Yeah, they're tough, but I got some numbers for you. The old Tom Caron line of contention.
Thank you. Which has been workshopped for a few years.
Is that where I got it from? Because we quoted on the show. It's yours?
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I came up with it a couple of years ago. I started using it a couple of years ago because we've had this inevitable slide through September for the last few years. And I needed to workshop it. We didn't come up with a good name until this year. Like, we used to kind of go the other way and name it such a stupid name. And one year we called it the Playoff Viability Quotient, the PVQ, which just doesn't, it's just so, but it's, but the line of contention kind of actually nailed it. And it's real simple to me. You can, without being too far out of the realm of possibility, you can shave a game off the standings per week. So if you're within the number of weeks remaining of first place, you are, in my opinion, still a contender. And it really came back to, Scott, you're at NESN. It really came back to every night with how many teams, we have a meeting, how many teams should we show in the standings, right? September 1st. Where do we cut the line? Cut the line at more weeks, more games back than weeks remaining. And so now it's become a thing. And this year, of all things, it's because it's such a weird race. Like, they have no business being even 4 back right now, right? They should be 12 back the way they've played. But Minnesota has been awful. And Kansas City just can't string together a week. But the Red Sox can't, the door's open. They just can't go through the door. And, they've been hovering in that 3 to 5 behind range for like a month now, which is crazy that they haven't fallen back the other way. So they're back, as we speak, they're back below the line of contention. Detroit is still in it, and they're out of it. So,
yeah,
and by the way, the final. Go ahead. Yeah, we're getting a lot of use out of it because they're always creeping back in. There's Alex Spearin pressed me on this. I had to. The weeks remaining change at midnight on Thursday each week. Just so you know, that's when you go to the weekend series. And I feel that that's when you round down versus round up. You round up till midnight on Thursday.
Okay, so I've been going via Sunday just because, where the season
which makes
ends.
sense. But then Monday, you got 6 days left in the week. It feels, it feels very harsh. So I grade on the curve. And so, you could go the other way we were talking about was like 3- and then 2+ on Thursday, but that's now it's getting so 3 and 2. It's 2 weeks as of Thursday at midnight.
So as we're recording this before the series finale of the Orioles series. They are just under that line. They are 1 game under the Caron contention line. 4 games back, 3 weeks left.
Yes. It means right now they're out of it.
Fangraphs has them at a 6.8% chance of making the playoffs. You have that odds higher.
Which, by the way, was almost like a 5% drop last night, which is crazy. Like that, they were 11% going into last night's game. And that's what's crazy. And part of that is because Detroit moved the game ahead of them. Detroit has the tiebreaker in that head-to-head. So that's really 2 games ahead of them. So now it's not, because that's the new age, right? If you finish in a dead heat and they have the tiebreaker, you're out. And so because you lost those last 2 games in Detroit last week, you went 3 and 4 against Detroit. And if you tie them, you're out, they're in. So that factors in. Because now you don't control your own destiny, right? When you were ahead of Detroit, you had those 3 games against Minnesota looming in a couple of weeks. If you can hang 3 games back, you can catch them. But now, not only would you need to do that, you'd need Detroit to lose a couple.
So do you think that 6.8, does that feel accurate?
Yeah. I mean,
is it arbitrary? Is it just a no? In your mind?
What?
Is it just a hard no, they're not in? It doesn't matter if it's 6% or 2%. Like they are out?
No, it's not a hard no because, again, Minnesota's a mess. I mean, they really are. And I don't think Detroit's any good. It's funny, when you look at all this, the thing that I keep going back to, the thing that keeps eating away at me, is these teams that have kind of caught you, Seattle and Detroit specific, they traded away guys at the deadline. Like, they waved the white flag.
Yep.
The Red Sox traded 10 prospects to get better this year. And instead, they went in the tank, and they've let the sellers catch up to them. That's not ideal.
I mean, the same thing has happened kind of around baseball. Like the Orioles buying at the deadline, kind of losing the division. The Cubs selling at the deadline look like they might have a shot. Like it is strange how it just nonsense.
It's been a weird race. It's been a weird race for a number of reasons. Just like I said, all these teams, nobody's been good. I mean, like really nobody's been good in the American League. I think all the contenders, at least yesterday when I looked, I haven't looked today, but all the contenders had losing records over the last 12 games or something like that. Like everybody ahead of you.
Yeah.
There was some Sunday after they lost that horrible game in Chicago. I think it was like Minnesota had gone 12-14 in the last 26 and picked up a game on the Red Sox in that stretch. I mean, it's just, you're not going to get anywhere, so the bullpen's been bad since the All-Star break. That's really that's where you fired your shots at the deadline. You thought Sims and Garcia were going to help. They didn't. And the bullpen, now they're on the injured list, and the bullpen just doesn't have the arms left to get in. The starting rotation's been really good for the last 2 weeks. It's like a sub-3 ERA. Nobody even knows. Cutter Crawford, who pitched last night, his last 5 starts, he's got an ERA right around 2.9, and he's lost all 5 of those starts. It's crazy. The bullpen, it's the late inning collapse. And then the defense has been a problem all year. And the offense went cold, right? The offense was covering up for a lot of mistakes And offenses come and go, and right now they've been in a funk for about 2 weeks, and that's killed them.
Game Time is the best place to buy tickets online to sports, concerts, all your favorite events. If you listen to the show, you know a couple years ago I went to the Superdome for the first time. This was my first NFL game, and let me tell you, I got the bug. I'm going to be going to NFL games as much as I can this year, and I'm going to be using the Game Time app. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And they've got this new super deal that lets you know just how good these tickets are. You'll see that they got good deals, they got okay deals. The new super tier, it's the best of the best. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you have heard me talk about Game Time before, which I'm sure you have, you know that I love you get to see your seat in the app before you buy. You get a panoramic view. There's no question, am I going to be able to see this? Am I going to see that? Which end am I going to be closer? And you can put on a VR headset and feel like you're already there. Use the Game Time app. It's the best way to get into the building. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Yeah, you mentioned the Fangraphs dropping significantly after yesterday's loss. I want you to know that was an impact one for me as well, because, the way we do our analysis around here, I made a bet with Joey that there was no chance that we were going to lose on Margaritaville giveaway night. And so now, after the show we do tonight, he can tell me at any point in the show, as many times as he wants, I have to do a shot of tequila on the show for however many times he wants for the rest of the show. So it was a big loss for the team and myself. I just, I didn't think it was possible on Margaritaville night to take that loss at home. But, yeah, I mean, that's
Buffett rolling in his grave. It's, as you brought, there was a great story the other day about how in 2004, when he was here and I was at that show, he predicted the World Series. He was like, this is the year we reverse the curse, because he had played at Fenway for the first time. And then they won the World Series. So and I would have been with you. If there was anything, there was any mystical support for this team, it would have been last night. So,
well, if you want to support, you got your own post-game show. I'm just saying, just going to throw that out there. I don't know if they would have let you do that. I feel like you might have a little bit more handcuffs.
Papelbon's not here. Yeah, Papelbon's not here. If he was here, we might do some with you. But it's Jim Rice tonight. I don't think that'll happen.
So what I want to ask you about is, we talked about, the bullpen not being good enough, and, the rotation has been good the last 2 weeks, but on the whole, it's, kind of been, the depth has been certainly tested. I wanted to ask you, we've entered the last few off seasons with, varying degrees of optimism entering the off season since Dombrowski left, really. Do you think this is the year that Boston starts to act like, or the winter, they start to act like a big market team again, or are you expecting more of the same from Breslow that we've seen in the past?
Can I go see none of the above? Here's what I think, and I don't know any of this, but here's what I think. I think this is the year they make the moves they need to make to get pitching, because that's what they're lacking. We all know it. I don't think they're going to go out and spend a ton of money, which I guess is what makes you start acting like a big market team. I think, they've got surplus positional player prospects. And I think they're going to use those resources, to go get a pitcher that would be under control. Because the problem with free agent pitchers, we know, is you sign them at 31, 32 years old. You give them too much money for too many years, and they break down. So why not trade? And I don't know who, but let's face it. You go right now, as you sit here looking at next year's team, you're going to have in some sequence Rafaela and Duran and Abreu and probably Roman Anthony. You're going to sit one of them on the bench. You're going to platoon. Chances are you're going to have to sit one of them every night unless you trade Yoshida and make one of them a DH. But none of those guys really profile as a DH. Their strength is that they can play defense. So why not trade one of those guys? Why not make one of those guys the centerpiece of a deal that gets you a young, controllable pitcher? Not just because he's cheap, but because he's young. And Seattle, Jeff Passan was talking about this yesterday. Seattle is an obvious trade partner. They've got an incredible rotation, and they've got pitching prospects, and they've got not enough hitters. I think Castillo has 3 years of control, and they've paid him, right? He's making, I don't know, 67, 72 million, something like that over the next 3 years. But that's pretty cheap for starting pitching, right? And he's a good one. So see if you can line up there. You've got infield prospects between Vaughn Grissom, whatever he's going to end up being. But prior to this year, he was supposed to be a can't-miss bat. Christian Campbell's become one of the fastest rising players in all of minor league baseball. So there's 2 middle infielders. Marcelo Meyer's got to come in somewhere. You got 3 more years of Trevor Story. And you got Casas and you got Devers at third base. So again, there's a surplus there, right? You got Kyle Teal coming. You got Connor Wong. Is Wong a utility guy? There's some things you've got to figure out on the position side that I think when you do, and they already have, I don't know. But, a couple of those guys are going to be expendable, and they're big prospects. Like these are young, either young minor league, young major league players who've already shown you something on Abreu or whatever, or some of the top prospects in baseball right now. You can package those up, and I think really help your pitching staff. Because then you'll have, you're going to have Giolito, and you can roll your eyes, but you're going to have Giolito. He's going to take the player option, obviously, and be here next year. And he's been durable up to now. Tanner Houck showed me something this year. I can pencil him for the top 2. Brian Bayo's been inconsistent, but he's coming along. Connor Crawford's a good back of the rotation guy. You go get a pitcher, and maybe you sign, the next Seth Lugo, who wasn't a ton of money, whoever that is, Michael Waka, who was here a couple of years ago, was good when he was here. You go round out the rotation that way, and I think this team is a contender. I think you're 2 starters away from being a contender, but I thought that last year, and they didn't address it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's frustrating there, and it kind of feels like, maybe you've reset expectations. Everyone has like the last 5 years of reset. It's like you talk about having to trade away a Rafaela, Duran, or Romanette, something like that, but it's like back at the Corbin Burns is going to be out there. You could just get someone like him or Rosie Sasaki if he does figure out a way to get over here, and then you have all that depth, and you have the ace or at least the frontline starter or something. But I do see what you're saying. Like they definitely could get away with a trade like that. But where you do have a couple like horses, potentially Blake Snell. I don't know how much of a fit that's going to be, but there is a way to buy talent this offseason without having to trade any of those young players away.
Well, again, the things I would say is I don't know where all the young talent's going to go, right? I mean, again, right. You can only have 13 guys on a roster. You can only have 9 players starting. I wouldn't be surprised if part of that logjam gets cleared up if they can trade Yoshida and make someone the DH, right? So that would give you an opportunity, or maybe that gives you an opportunity to bring back O'Neill, who I love at this ballpark, and maybe DH he stays healthy. But I just think it's not just the Red Sox, and you could say they don't act like a big market team, but most of the big market clubs don't go spend a ton on pitching anymore. There's only a few. Dombrowski does it in Philadelphia. We know that. The Dodgers do it in LA. But most of the other teams, I mean, like to me, it's like the Cubs getting Imanaga. Like that was the kind of deal you want to find. Yamamoto was just an insane amount of money, and he ends up on the IL most of the year. If you're going to sign a guy to a 5-year free agent contract, you're going to spend, whatever 5 years and 200 million or whatever. You got to assume that for a year and a half of that, he's going to be recovering from Tommy John surgery, and that can happen to anybody. But if you're going to lay out $30 million a year for a pitcher, that's $30 million you're going to be paying while they rehab. So that's just the reality of pitching now. And I just think it's smarter to try to get a younger guy who you can control than it is to go pay, because free agents are older, more likely to break down on the pitching side.
I have to be honest with both of you guys. I am so ready for speculation season to be behind us. Like the past 3 years of being like, well, maybe this offseason they could trade for this guy and they can, this piece and that. I want it here. And I know that's like a spoiled 90s kid who got to grow up seeing 38 championships in the city in my lifetime. But I'm so past like, well, maybe they'll do this. Maybe they'll do that. I want it. I want it now. I know I feel like a brat banging on the table, but
last year was tough, right? Breslow had just come in. And so there was a certain amount of getting him up to speed and where, and again, I thought, honestly, he showed a willingness to be bold. You know what I mean? Signing Giolito wasn't nothing. I mean, he was one of the bigger free agent pitchers available out there. And you know, I mean, the Jordan Montgomery thing, I still think was a mistake. They should have grabbed him. I think he would have had a good run here. It was a mess for him the way it turned out. He fired Boris. I just, and, you know, trading Chris Sale for Vaughn Grissom, you can complain about it now, but everybody loved the move at the time. And that was a pretty bold move. And so, you know, what he did at the trade deadline, right, the Verdugo deal, which is looking better every day. And then, again, he showed a willingness to be bold at the trade deadline. He traded away 10 prospects and got back some pitching, including Priester, who struck out 7 last night and was a first-round pick. So they've got more pitching. So I like what he's done so far. I'm like you. I'm excited to see him a full offseason. You know, now that he knows this organization, he knows his prospects. He's had a year under the hood. Let's see what he can do.
There is reason to believe better days are not far off. But TC, I
would bet you right now a shot of tequila, just one. I'm an old man. I'm not going to do much. But at this time next year, we'll check in. They will be in the playoff race at this point next year. In fact, I think they'll be a playoff team next year.
The TC guarantee?
The TC guarantee that they will be above the line of contention. I absolutely, you know, time's running out this year. I would have thought a month ago, I still thought they were a playoff team this year. But I absolutely think the young players we've watched mature here over this past year, they're gonna be impact players next year. I think they're a good team next year.
As do I. TC, I wanted to open up the floor to you. You are co-chairman of the Jimmy Fund, and this Friday is the radio telethon check presentation at Fenway.
Last Friday.
It was last Friday. So sorry.
It was last Friday. That's fine. It's $4 million. We're happy to present it.
How? First of all, how you first got involved with them, and Dana Farber, and what that means to you and your story.
Thanks. Yeah, Brock Holt and I are the co-chairman, replacing Larry Lucchino, who, you know, used to joke when he was running the Red Sox that it would take 2 people to replace him for the Red Sox. Well, it took 2 people to replace him at the Jimmy Fund. And you know, Brock and I have both been real passionate about it. I had a lymphoma diagnosis back in 2015. I was very lucky that they removed the mass and nothing. I never had to go through chemo, never had to go through any treatment after that. They removed the mass. That was it. They got all the cancer, which was amazing. It hadn't spread, but you know, you glimpse into that abyss. Like I walked into the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute for my first round of body scans to see if the cancer had spread anywhere else now that we knew it was cancer. And that's a pretty scary moment in anybody's life. And, you know, the reassurance and the confidence that you gain from a place like that, knowing you got the best in the world, I was scared, but I wasn't. Yeah, I've been doing the telethon at that point. I've been doing it since 2003, 4, whenever it's been 21 years I've been involved. And I've heard so many stories. I was like, okay, yeah, now it's my turn. Not a huge surprise. So many people get it. And so when they came to me over the telethon last month, and they said, listen, we're talking to Brock. We'd like to find the right person to do it with him. Would you be interested? Brock and I love Brock. We're great friends. He doesn't live locally. I do, so I can do some of the stuff he can't. So that's sort of how we ended up here now. And kind of the lead advocate is the role, right? A lot of kissing babies and shaking hands and trying to help them get the word out. First big event, I'll be doing the Jimmy Fund Marathon Walk October 6th. You can go online, learn more about that at jimmyfund.org. And it's just, you know, it meant so much to me through that sort of 2-year stretch of follow-up tests to see if I had cancer and how scary that is. And they were just so amazing that anytime I could do anything to help them back, I would. So this is a small way to repay some of that debt.
Yeah, they do great work over there. I mean, we, as well as every other person on the planet, you know, have people in our lives who, you know, cancer has touched, and yeah, they just do great work over there. So thank you for your involvement over there too, and also just a personal one here, a hefty dose of gratitude from some friends of mine in Maine for all that you did in Lewiston. I know you were very involved in the fundraising there and involved in the vigil out there. So a couple of moments of genuity here at the end to. You know, a couple of thank yous for
yeah, well, you know, we've seen too many of these. Thank you. Yeah, we've seen too many of these mass shootings, and that's one thing. You know, said I got cancer, and you sort of said, "Oh, well, I guess it's my turn." You don't ever expect it to be your turn, that your hometown is on the news, and so that was scary stuff. So thank you. Yeah, that was a heavy time. The 1 year anniversary is coming up in October, and I'm going to be involved in some stuff up there for that. Just a really a heavy burden for a lot of people. And I just remember other people saying this. So I remember saying it when I spoke in Lewiston, like, don't let that night, that horrific, senseless act of violence, define the city. Don't let, anytime you hear Lewiston, don't let it be, oh my God, that town, I'm sorry. It's a great town. Mainers are strong, they're resilient. So the city's back on its feet. And if I can help that, I will.
Yeah, no, that doesn't define Lewiston. Ollie Liston does. That'll
there
always
you go.
be.
Well done. The Phantom Punch. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, TC. We hope to have you back on. Thanks so much for coming on. And,
thanks, guys. It was fun.
We'll talk to you soon.
And you kept Kenley Jansen waiting. So there you go. That shows how important this is. All right. I got to go talk to Kenley now. He's waiting downstairs. So thanks, guys. I enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.